till this little fiasco that's on the billboard behind me started, I was going to title this episode "Brad Buys More Useless Things to Automate His House."
Yep.
But they showed up. You may not be able to see this all that well.
Yep. Yep. What is that?
All that says is the temperature. But what this thing is
Mm-hmm.
is a temperature and humidity, or tells me the temperature and humidity right where I'm sitting, which, by the way, is 63 degrees.
Which is very cold.
Yeah, which is why the space heater is blowing on my feet. More importantly, though, there's 35% humidity in this area.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Okay.
what I'm doing, and what will be part of the write-up next week, because it involves some Raspberry Pinus, is I'm going to get a smart plug. And oddly enough, you can't do this in HomeKit, at least I haven't figured it out, but you can do it in the dedicated app for this thing, which ties into HomeKit, which then brings that rule of automation into HomeKit. It's dumb, but whatever. I'm going to set this up so that when it gets above 50% humidity, it's going to kick on the dehumidifier.
All right. So it's not just a temperature and humidity display.
Yeah, it's a HomeKit
also
sensor is what this is.
Yeah. Okay.
So
you can fire off actions based on.
yeah, these things are not cheap, by the way. This thing, which is not the version I bought, and I'll explain in a second, can be like $49 for one,
Right.
which is not worth it. But I found them refurbished on Amazon for, I think they were $19, which still not cheap. But for my HomeKit automation fetish, it kind of fits the bill of of things. But the reason why is, so we have I'm not going to drag it over here, a dehumidifier from honestly probably the 70s. It is brown. Wow. It has no settings except off and on. But every
so you can't even set like
no.
I want it to be at this level of humidity.
Nope. It is either sucking it out or nothing. But every single person we've ever had in our house that's done work on a furnace or anything has looked at that thing and they said, you never throw that thing away.
Wow.
Until it breaks. They said they're one of the best that has ever been made. I mean, it was made in probably the 70s, maybe even the 60s. Well, I don't think the 60s, just because of the amount of plastic that's on it. But everyone's like, this thing, and I'm like, all right, I won't get rid of it. And so, like the plug doesn't even have a ground on it. Like that's how old this thing is. So it's just a walking like electrical hazard.
And if I'm not mistaken, it must have some kind of a basin for water in it.
Yes.
So which it's also.
I mean, I guess the ground is probably me every time I empty it.
Every time you touch the water and the
yeah. But it works incredibly well. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this thing in a little bit more of a corner of the basement, get a smart plug on there, have it automated up. And then I got two sensors. I don't need two of them, but I was like,
you should get, Brad, what you need? You need a water sensor that you can apply on the inside top of that bucket of water so that when that thing needs to be emptied, you'll get a notification.
So I have an old school mechanism for letting me know when it needs to be emptied.
Okay. And
this thing isn't, I wouldn't call it quiet.
Yeah, right.
And so when it gets to a certain level, it weighs too much and it trips a sensor and actually shuts it off.
Oh, so it's just being off.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so ever since we had that flooding problem in the basement, we bought a dehumidifier, which of course is a modern one, so you can set the humidity level you're shooting for, whether it can blow fast or slowly or whatever. It's it hums, it's loud, it's whatever, but it's also right next to my daughter's basement, so she will always close the door to that room, and I go down. That's the room I use for the elliptical. So if I go down there, I'll leave the door open. And she can close. Obviously, it's fine if she closes it. But ideally, what would happen is it would only run between certain hours of the day, like when she's at school, and not at night when she's sleeping or whatever. And we wouldn't have to worry about the door, But you're already describing a level of work that I'm just vaguely uncomfortable with. Like, just the thought of doing what you're doing is like, whatever. I'll just leave it on.
And as Greg points out in the comments, he says the amount of humidity in the air that is comfortable is not detrimental, is dependent on the temperature. So I fully agree. I'm candidly more worried about just like mold growth and everything else. So
of course, and that's why we have the.
In the wintertime, it's not a problem. It's 35% humidity down here right now. But in the summertime, when it's 6 million % humidity outside, I want to try to keep the inside of the house, or the basement, I should say, as low as as
Yeah,
reasonable.
it's dry in the winter.
Yep.
The air tends to be drier. Well, it still runs. I mean, the one we have still runs pretty often. Not as much as in the summer. I mean, for sure. Yeah.
So we'll see how this goes, and we just know that when I don't know. The other cool thing that I did, and this is again completely pointless, and I did this like 20 minutes ago. Hopefully, it never happens. Is that I didn't realize this because of the little thing that I did. I can now set it so with the Raspberry Pi, I can now see if the smoke or carbon monoxide detector trips. And so what you could do then is have it turn on all the lights in the house, which is kind of nice, I guess. If you're going to die, at least you can see your death coming.
You can see the smoke.
Or the carbon
that's
monoxide would be more important, but they're already linked, so they should just be loud and obnoxious or whatever. But
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, it's home automation because what could ever go wrong? One day I'm going to come home and things are just going to be beeping and it's going to be like an episode from the Jetsons where everything's just malfunctioning and I just burn the house down. Like there's just no saving it.
Yep. Yeah, I'm just going to let it happen. I can't. It's pointless trying to stop this. It's like Final Destination.
We're way too invested emotionally and financially into the smart home. The thing is, my house isn't all that big either. Like I could probably turn off most of this stuff with a large stick, but
from like standing in the center of the house. Yeah.
So, but whatever. All right. So, topic of the day, Paul's very nice billboard here that he made.
Speaking of things that are pointless.
Yeah, we'll try to keep
Let's talk about Elizabeth Warren a little bit.
Somewhat politically neutral here, but the idea here is that companies get too large and they need to be broken up, and everyone on the planet will always talk about the AT&T from many years ago that they broke up into regional things. And it's always saying, yes, this is a resounding success, despite the fact that you could argue it probably either way, depending on your metric of success. But here we are. And so political bombshell or whatever we typically avoid politics is that Google, Amazon, and Facebook need to be broken up. They're too big. They've got too much power.
This is according to Elizabeth Warren, who is a presidential candidate on the Democrat side of the fence. So, I mean, I don't even know where to start with this one.
Paul throughout speechless. That is what presidential candidates can do. They can.
Politically, I don't really have too many problems with her, I guess, but as a person, I don't. She's not necessarily whatever. So, I guess I'll stick to the tech part of it. It's an interesting idea, and you can sort of understand the point behind it. The one thing, it's interesting if you read what she wrote, it's a pretty long explanation of her idea. Nothing she's suggesting will fix what she describes as the central problem with these companies, which is the violation of privacy stuff, which would be something separate, I guess, that needs to be addressed. From the perspective of traditional antitrust, which is what Microsoft fell under when it had its antitrust issues in the United States, you'd have to contort things a bit to describe any of these companies as a true monopolist. But it is fair to say, and this is not technically illegal, but when you become big and powerful and successful, it allows you to invest in other markets, which may or may not be related to the central market of the company. And she listed some businesses that those three companies had acquired, like DoubleClick with Google and Nest. I don't remember. What was the Amazon one? Who did Amazon acquire? I can't even remember. But and then Facebook, of course, acquired Instagram and I think WhatsApp. And
Foods.
Whole Foods. Thank you. And then there was another one too, but whatever. So okay, obviously there was a reduction of competition there. That's sort of theoretically a problem, of course. But those acquisitions, by the way, all passed regulatory scrutiny, all of them.
Yeah.
And so the most controversial part of what she's suggesting is that we go back and reverse the rulings on those acquisitions and actually sever those companies from the parent company, right? So Instagram would become its own company again. WhatsApp would become its own company again, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not a legal expert, obviously, but I have never heard of anything like that happening. Like that's really interesting, you know? And I don't remember the year that Google bought DoubleClick, but that was a big event. Microsoft tried very hard to prevent that from happening, and arguing correctly that Google would basically dominate online advertising. And Microsoft rather, you may recall, bought a company, I think it was called Aquantive.
Yep.
Which was like a very distant number 2 in this market, and then about a year later wrote it off. That it was a complete loss. It was just a waste of time. And of course, Microsoft's online advertising business is dwarfed by Google's, regardless. But Microsoft tried to prevent that from happening and failed. Anyway, I guess there's 2 gray areas here. What we're basically arguing is, regardless of whether or not these companies technically meet the requirement of a monopolist, we still break them up. You know, and look, when Microsoft, when Judge Thomas Penfield Jackson was asking, or was saying he was going to break up Microsoft, at that time, I actually felt like that was the right course. You know, that's what was necessary. Now, I would say, as it turned out, Microsoft was so hobbled by what happened to it with antitrust, both here and in Europe, that it became the most ineffectual company on earth for approximately 1 decade. And that's what actually allowed Google, Apple too, and Amazon, Facebook, and other companies to kind of rise to the forefront. I think the Microsoft of the past would have aggressively gone after these businesses in ways that they were unable to because of antitrust. And that might have actually leveled the playing field a little bit, which is kind of an ironic thing. Anyway, that's unprecedented. And then I believe, and then actually taking away acquisitions that they made.
Yeah.
I don't even know how that would work. Well, it doesn't even make sense. I mean, think about a really simple example. Like, I'll just make it up because I don't know what the money involved was, who owned what, whatever. But you have a small company like Instagram, right? Probably has a founder or some number of founders. It probably has some VCs that were behind it that invested money in the company. It had investors of other kinds, whatever it was. But there's some kind of a simple structure. It's probably never actually made any money, but it was valued at some amount. And then Facebook swooped in and paid some billions of dollars, whatever the amount was. And that money was distributed to all those people, most of whom are probably long gone, I would imagine. But even if they're not, you know, some of them could be working for Facebook, whatever. But the money has been dispersed, like it's gone.
Yeah.
These guys have bought yachts. They've ruined real estate prices in San Francisco. They've done stupid shit with that. So it's over. How do you reverse that? You go back to these guys? We're like, hey, sorry, there was a court ruling over here, and I'm gonna need all that money back now. You know, you were a millionaire. Remember how fun that was? Yeah, it's over, and now we need the money back. Like, obviously, you can't do that. I don't understand what the plan is. Like, it just doesn't. Money has changed hands.
Yeah. Well, and you're missing one of the larger complications of all is actually the shareholder. Because the people that own Facebook, the shareholders, okay, let's just say you're going to lop off Instagram. You're just going to cut them off. They're going to spin them out in their own business, which means that then Facebook has to give them enough money to survive, which means that the stock then has to split. Yeah. And then they have to distribute the shares. Like, it can be done. It's just really messy.
It's terrible. And the problem is the thing you arrive at the end probably isn't as valuable as just Facebook is today, right? So you split off WhatsApp, you split off Instagram, you give Facebook's shareholders some percentage of these other stocks in this new company. I guess that would be the equitable thing to do. And I don't know. You've kind of companies merge for various reasons. Some of them literally are to stop competition or perceived competition. I mean, just this week, Facebook announced that they were completely reversing course. They were going to go away from what I'll just call public sharing and go to private sharing, which is the WeChat model from China. And it's going to be like this completely different company on the other side. So it's kind of like the Microsoft Teams thing. Like, well, how do you do that? You either make an acquisition where you buy a company that already is doing that and then you kind of incorporate it into your stuff, or you just stop everything and you change the way that you do things. And Microsoft developed teams in house. I mean, we don't know how Facebook is going to do this, but they're already in the middle of going. They've already kind of peaked at what they are. We know that they've lost users, so now they're going after a completely different business model. Oh, and by the way, here's Elizabeth Warren. She doesn't like what you did in the past, and now we're gonna stab you in the back as you're running for this future thing.
Yeah,
like the whole thing is just. It's nuts, and God bless her. I love her for that. I guess it's insane.
Yeah, insane ideas are fun.
Yeah,
it's
nuts.
Speaking of insane ideas, I don't want to switch the topic, but made an insane proposal lately. Paul, I believe you know what this is. I'm not going to say what it is.
Okay.
And we'll talk about it as we get closer to the event, but we'll see if it happens. Everyone's gonna be like, "What the hell is Brad talking about?"
I'm drawing a blank.
Just know that it happened today, and we'll talk about it in the future. It'll be fun if it happens.
You made an insane proposal today.
Yes.
I mean, I was here today.
No. I told you this. I think like maybe yesterday or the day before, after we recorded the podcast. So.
Okay.
Let's see Paul digging back through. Anyways, we'll see what happens with this. This thing. I mean. Anybody wondering like what's the next steps for this? Well, she kind of has to become president.
Yes, that would be part of it. I mean,
like it's not something that's just moving along right now. This is, I don't even know if you call this step one.
To throw out there as, I know you have like 20 Democratic candidates to choose from, or soon will. Here's how I'm going to differentiate myself.
Yeah,
it's I don't know. It's a bet on a certain political climate being, reaching a breaking point, I guess, right? That our disgust over these privacy issues is so great, and that there are enough young voters who don't really care about any of these companies. I mean, Facebook is actually, I would say all of these companies really are very new in a real sense, but to younger people, they're kind of like whatever. They're just there in the background. They're always there, I suppose there's probably a certain amount of ambivalence to all of these companies, from certain age groups, I guess. But does that I mean, does that translate into like outright hatred and we need to destroy them? I don't. Most people aren't that motivated,
Yeah.
I don't know.
We'll see. It's
fascinating.
Yeah, other fascinating things happening. Windows 10 Preview Bill 18353 for 19H1 is now kicked out. You can go download that if your heart desires that sort of thing. The thing you need to know is that they're still having issues with the game anti-cheat software. So that I honestly think that is probably a blocking bug from this thing shipping like in mass, like to everybody, because I mean you can't just go. Yeah. Especially on the eve of their Xbox gaming announcements coming next week, which they're having an event March 12th, and they have a game developer conference. It'd be great if they also got up and stage and said, don't install that build because you can't play on them.
Microsoft a year ago would have shipped this thing, but I'm thinking based on last couple updates, maybe they'll.
Well, they are definitely aware of it. They're clearly got to be working on it because, And then they're talking about still trying to get people to play State of Decay, it looks like, maybe. So
yeah, I think they keep adding people to that little beta. The beta that of which shall never speak.
Yeah.
We don't really know what we're testing, but look, it's a free game.
Yeah. There was something else I was going to say. Oh, I know what I was supposed to mention. Paul, what are we doing March 26th in New York City?
Yeah. So you and I and Mary Jo will be in New York at an undisclosed location, which we're not disclosing because we don't want people just to show up.
If you register for a ticket, though, you'll find out.
Right, and there are tickets; they're free. We're not charging anything. We just, but we're going to spend about an hour discussing the health of technology, a variety of markets spanning, computers and personal technology to the enterprise. We'll actually be in there, in this space for a couple of hours. So people can come early, we can hang out and everything, and that'll be cool. And then after the event, we're going to have a meetup that starts, I should say the first event starts at 4 p.m., although the doors will open at 3. And then we're going to have a meetup at Rattle and Hum West, which is now the only Rattle and Hum, unfortunately. at what, 6 p.m. I think.
Yeah, it's that evening for sure. So
yeah, and that meetup is open to anybody. So if you're in the area, come on down.
Yeah, 6 p.m. until Brad can't feel feelings anymore.
Yeah, yeah, it's gonna get stupid.
Yeah, I feel it's kind of like par for the course. Then we got Build. When's Build? May. So Build's probably what, like 4 weeks after that.
Yeah, it's right at the beginning. I think it starts the 7th-ish, like whatever that Monday is. Mm-hmm. We don't have anything between those two things, huh?
No, only the month of April, but
yeah, that's what I was trying to remember. I thought we had something in there, but I have I have other travel I got to deal with for a variety of things. My daughter is out looking at schools up in Scranton. I told her to say hello to Dunder Mifflin while she was there. But I think sometime in April, we're going to go down to Florida and look at a couple schools.
It's not a bad place to go.
Yeah, maybe. I was like, I said, listen, if you're trying to find a place where they value your education less than Emmaus, Florida might not be a bad place to start.
If you're in Florida, we don't hate you. Paul, just specifically Paul does.
No, Florida is not oriented. Well, I mean, obviously they have big schools in Florida, but I mean, it's not exactly Boston. I mean, I'm just saying it's
nothing
it
is Boston. I mean,
no, I know, but
except maybe like Stanford in that area. But
okay, I'm sorry. Let me reset here. What I meant, what I was getting at was,
go ahead, offend more people. We're waiting.
No, I mean, Florida is more of a retirement type place, right? So the laws and the the actions that various towns take and so forth toward.
Yes, just keep digging, Paul. You'll eventually get out of this.
No, this is a fact. Like in Dedham, for example, we used to have all these town resolutions about we're going to fund something for the high school. Yeah. High school needs to be replaced, blah, blah, blah. We barely got a middle school thing passed. It was only because the state paid 50%. Mm-hmm. And the people who vote against that stuff are always the old people because they're done with school. They don't want to. They don't want to pay for other kids to go to school. So Florida, because it is, heavily retirement age people, compared to say Massachusetts, where you'd have to be insane to live because the weather is terrible and it's expensive, I would be less inclined to pay for good school. That's all I'm saying. It's not a dig against Florida, per se. It's just. Why are we still talking about this? Elizabeth Warren is terrible. Can we all agree to that?
The good thing about digging in Florida is
Massachusetts, right? I think, isn't she?
You don't have to go down too deep to find the water, no matter where you are.
Yeah.
Oh my God. There's something else. I'm very excited about this one, and it is completely artificial, but it makes me happy. You know what happens Sunday, Paul?
I do. Yeah, I do. Daylight savings time.
We do. Which I'd like to inform you is the correct time that we should stay on for all of eternity. This standard time now is.
Yeah, I agree with that. Except that what's going to happen when we do this, because we spring forward, right? Mm-hmm. Every morning I get up, and for the past months or so, it's pitch black when I get up. Like it's pitch black, and I sit in the sunroom. I have to turn the light on because it's so dark, and I read the paper. And for the past week, 2 weeks, maybe, during the time I'm sitting there, the sun has come up. Mm-hmm. It's hitting me in the face. It's warm. It's nice. It gives me this hope that spring is coming. And then next week it's going to roll back an hour, right? Yeah. Because I'll still be getting up at the same time, even though it's technically an hour earlier.
Yep. It'll be dark again. But
yeah, so it'll be another month or something.
I was going to say, you're going to be about 6 weeks, and then it'll be back to normal. But in the evening time, which is always my personal favorite, is then you can take the dog on a walk after dinner, which is one of my favorite things to do any time of the year when it's a given, or a possibility, I should say.
Yeah, right. My wife is very upset about this because she walks the dog in the morning and she runs, and she's like, I don't want to go back to this. I want to live in some place where it's light in the morning and light at night. And I said, literally, it's funny because we just had this conversation. You need to move to Florida.
I was going to say, the Key West.
Yeah.
The closer you get to that imaginary line in the sky, known as the equator, the better.
I wonder what Cancun's like as a kind of year-round place. I bet they don't have good schools either, Brad. You know what I'm saying? You don't hear a lot about that street full of colleges in Cancun for some reason. It's just not a thing.
But there are a lot of college students in Cancun,
That's for sure.
unsurprisingly.
Yes.
Unsurprisingly. You got anything else for today, Mr. Professor Thurrott?
Is there anyone else I could insult today? No, I guess not. I mean, I'm sorry. It's funny, the Facebook thing. Facebook, I feel like this is actually kind of a big story, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it's not the Elizabeth Warren thing. I mean, just Facebook in general. And Facebook this past week had basically just come out and said, we're going to change everything we do, and they've been successful at what they do. I mean, for obvious reasons. I mean, obviously they have terrible problems, but I find it fascinating that they would do something like this. I don't believe they're going to be successful. I think there is a huge chance that they will silently reverse course at some point. But I'm fascinated anytime a company stands up in front of the world and says, yeah, we're going to change everything we do. It's just such a weird.
It's counterintuitive to their entire business model.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have spent years and years building and buying expertise of a certain kind, and you've been so successful that you're now under great scrutiny.
Yep.
So I'm curious. I need to look into this. I want to go back and kind of read what Zuckerberg wrote there in the blog post and kind of try to understand it. But I don't
ever, it would take a monumental shift to me to mentally start thinking, oh yeah, Facebook, that's a good thing to use to log into a website because I know that my data is not going to be tracked or it's going to remain private.
Oh, I have zero interest in the new Facebook. I mean, I have to tell you, for all of the issues, like the reason I haven't quit Facebook is the reason that I joined in the first place. It's the only way, good, bad, or indifferent, that I can keep up with certain people that I actually do care about, but don't see, in person a lot. And so I've done a lot more stuff on Instagram over the past year or so, maybe a couple of years, than I have on Facebook for sure. The irony of Facebook owning Instagram is not lost on me. Don't worry about that. But, there are certain relatives, especially friends, whatever it is. I mean, they're just on Facebook. And so when I think about this company changing the way they do things so that now there's only private sharing, what that reminds me of is Facebook Messenger, which I loathe. I don't want individual private conversations with people, right? I kind of like it's almost like serendipity of just putting something out there and the randomness of who may reply to it sometimes, right, is kind of interesting. So I don't know. Things like Facebook Messenger or Skype is like this too, are essentially private conversations between either two people or some small group of people. They're not public broadcasts out to the world. They are inherently annoying, aren't they?
Oh yeah.
I mean, there are notifications and things you have to deal with. Like if I don't go to Facebook for a week and my cousins and my aunts and uncles and my friends or whatever have been posting with abandon and I missed that stuff, it doesn't matter. But if my Aunt Marilyn writes me a message on Facebook Messenger to me, I have to deal with that. You know what I mean? Like I don't actually think that's desirable. Not that she shouldn't be able to reach out to me, but I mean, if that's all that it is,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. They're going to try to
That's
pivot.
what's going through my head.
At least their marketing aspect is trying to pivot. We'll see if they actually do.
I don't think they're going to be able to make it work.
That's too.
I really don't.
Yeah, it'd be like Google trying to back out of the advertising model.
Think about how slowly Microsoft transitioned away from Windows, right?
Oh, yeah.
Which, by the way, they have not completed, right? And there was a lot of fits and starts and false steps, and they used to. Oh, it was always Windows only. Then it was Windows first. Then it was like Windows best, and then it was like Windows. What's Windows? I mean, those things don't just happen overnight. I don't see it. I don't see how they can do it.
Well, Azure was a big bet. That was a reactionary bet to what Amazon was doing, and it took years for them to get that up and running until it was even viable to be a business.
Up and running, and then also just to hit all of the X as a service things they had to hit. I mean, because in the beginning, remember, it was just one thing. It was, kind of basic compared to how it is today. I don't know. I'm confused by this.
Well, it's just another day on First Ring Daily.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Well, that wraps it up for today. Make sure to check out the stuff we're doing in New York. I'll include a link in the descriptions here and all that good stuff. If nothing else, have yourselves a wonderful weekend. Enjoy your daylight savings time leap thing if you're in the U.S. If not, do what you will on your Sunday morning. Have yourselves a good one.